Welcome to the Scariest Things podcast, your gateway to the trends and tropes of the horror genre. This is episode 120, Heavy Metal! Yeah! Horror. Heavy metal horror. We are covering the most metal of all horror, and there is a lot because, as we all know, this is we often talk about two great tastes that go well together. There are no two tastes that are more inextricably linked forever and ever and ever, and that's heavy metal and horror. And there's a variety of reasons why those things are inextricably linked.
Yes. And still kept fresh to this day. Although a lot of retro kind of like a lot of the stuff that they do for more recent fare, it's still a throwback to the 80s. Right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
To the heyday of the video nasty, parental nervousness about heavy metal.
Yeah, when it all kicked off.
And that's all, I think part and parcel of why these are two things that parents objected to.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yep.
For sure.
Now,
for sure.
I have to admit, this is squarely in Mike and Liz's wheelhouse.
Yep.
We've often talked about things that are in Eric's preferred milieu, but this is we are right in the sweet spot for Ms. Williams and Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
So why don't you
Indeed.
go ahead, Liz? Why don't you tell us about your relationship with the metal?
Oh, I like it fast. I like it loud, but boy, I have an affinity for hair metal, and I am not ashamed to say it. I like the 80s party hair metal.
Do you have all the
I
Cinderella
also
albums?
love a ballad. I mean, come on, I'm a chick. They get me, So, but yes, I love heavy metal. I love horror. These are two great tastes that taste great together, and there is so much good stuff here. It was very hard to narrow it down to my top three. Got some backups, but I think I've got some fun stuff in here for people where you don't have to be a metal fan to like it all. But one of them, you're definitely going to have to be a metal fan.
You at least have to be a metal fan to tolerate these films.
Yeah, I think
So Mike, is your first love punk or metal?
Oh, metal for sure. And in fact, I'm gonna quote Kirk Hammett because I think Kirk Hammett he summed up the relationship between heavy metal and horror very well. He said, "A good heavy metal song should be like a good horror movie, exciting to watch or listen to with lots of dynamics. You're not sure where it's going to take you, but once you get there, you're glad to be there. Heavy metal just doesn't work when you're singing about peace, love, or purple flowers. It's much more effective to sing about zombies, the end of the world, and Phantom of the Opera."
Yeah.
True love.
Speaking of Iron Maiden.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, I think Kirk Hammett, as we all know, has maybe a deeper affinity for both metal and horror than we will ever imagine in a million lifetimes.
He has also the world's greatest collection of horror memorabilia.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Right.
With the kind of money to pay for it.
Right. Oh yeah.
He has a Smithsonian-sized collection.
Oh yeah.
And there's actually, if you're interested, there's at least one book about his collection.
Too much horror. Or no,
I think it's called
Too Much
It's
Horror
a Lot.
Business.
What was that, Liz?
Isn't it called It's Alive? And it's his horror
No.
posters.
No, that's the festival he does.
Oh.
The book. I think the book is called Too Much Horror Business.
Okay.
Oh,
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, but it is a everything that.
Yes, you're correct. Too much horror business.
So and his love goes all the way back to the Universal oldie monsters. He has a lot of the very rare, eightfold posters. Of Dracula and Frankenstein and
Right.
All the way everything. He's got everything.
Right.
And it's just one of those kinds of things where you realize again that an inextricable link
Right.
of the cultures.
Well, I think it's interesting too because like with Kirk Hammett's obviously talking about the peace love, the peace and love generation of the mid to late '60s. But you could you can argue it goes back to 1963 with Mario Bava and Black Sabbath, right?
Yeah.
And then obviously Black Sabbath had nothing to do with the peace and love movement, and really it was the nadir of the peace and love movement that brought on a very, very dark tone. And you can argue all you want whether it's Dick Dale or Blue Cheer or somebody else that started heavy metal. Obviously, many people point to Black Sabbath,
Yes,
because they were the heaviest and the darkest. But what I think they did, because there was heavier music that came on, heavier and darker music that came on before Black Sabbath. What they merged was the imagery and the lyrical content with the heavy sound, creating that. And obviously they chose a Mario Bava movie to be their
I think
to be their band name, which is like held true for now 50 years.
Well, and the beauty of Black Sabbath was that it was both accessible and dangerous at the same time.
Right.
It had its as a gateway
Right.
metal.
Oh yeah.
It's very easy to get a hold of, as opposed to trying to like, hey, my first recollection of metal is Slayer. It's
right.
like, no, that's not. It's a little bit of a not. You got the virtuoso stylings of speedcore and that kind of stuff, but there's some dark, creepy melodies.
Oh yeah.
That
but you also have Bill Ward, who was traditionally a jazz drummer, and he brought sort of that jazz shuffle, but then underpinning all of it is just kind of a heavier blues sound.
Right.
Really, is really what it gets down to.
And Zeppelin coming up at the same time, and you can
Right,
debate
right.
whether that's metal or not.
Right.
No.
There are people.
They did have a relationship with Aleister Crowley, but that's a whole other podcast.
It was certainly heavier music.
Yeah.
But so my recollections of heavy metal was as a 13-year-old kid, and realizing I was the smallest kid in the school, and one of the things where it's like, I trying to figure out what's cool, and I was like stuff coming off of things like Men at Work,
Right.
and The Police, and stuff like that, and which was pop music of the early '80s, and all of a sudden, but I realized it's like I gotta have an edge,
Right.
and so what do I latch onto?
Kajagoogoo.
I remember Judas Priest screaming for vengeance.
Right.
Iron Maiden, Number of the Beast.
Right.
And the pop metal that goes along with it. I made a brass and copper badge of Def Leppard after their Pyromania album became really, really big.
Right.
I think it was in 1983.
Yeah.
I think. And so that was sort of the ascendancy of hair metal. I kind of broke my relationship off following the Great White Line Shark Snake sort of mashup of they all kind of seem to sound the same to me, and I was less interested about girls and fast cars than I was about some of the darker tones.
Sure.
But I couldn't bridge the gap to getting into Anthrax and Slayer.
Sure.
Although there's some certainly like an early Metallica.
Right.
I think in hindsight, you listen to the early Metallica stuff, and it's like, oh yeah, this is some really cool music. But at the time, it was like, this is a bit much for me.
Right.
So
have you guys ever picked up a record? Did you ever in your youth pick up a metal album and go, this is terrifying, this is so scary, I don't even know what's going on?
Well, ironically, I picked up an album because of the cover, and thinking it was metal, and it was Meatloaf, Bat Out of Hell.
Yeah.
That's a scary cover.
It's got a very metal cover. It's not metal.
It might be the most non-metal metal album cover of all time.
That's right. But I think we were just before we were starting up talking about the Iron Maiden's The Trooper and not Power Slave, Peace of Mind.
Yeah, Peace of Mind.
It was the one with the zombie in a straitjacket chained up.
Eddie.
Yeah, and those
He's not the zombie. He's Eddie.
So this is the
We can see Eric's true colors are showing here.
no, it's true. I mean, this is Mike. Mike is the metal scholar in this room. This is I am a mere passenger. So,
what about you, Liz? Was there ever a point when you picked up a metal album that either like intrigued you, enthralled you, or terrified you?
I mean, all of them. I love them all.
Right.
But I mean, like, I don't know if Portland has I don't know if you guys have a big heavy metal scene. We did in the 90s when I was growing up.
Right.
So there was tons of local bands that we could go see. And I mean, I remember like one of my favorite ones was local called Acid Bath, and they had like John Wayne Gacy paintings on the front of their album When the Kite Strings Pop, which is one of the best albums ever. So, just things like that. I was into true crime. I was into all that. So no, I mean, they were all scary, but that's what I wanted.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I was looking for.
Yep.
I don't recall, in the 90s, of course, the hair metal getting pushed aside, particularly here in the Pacific Northwest.
It got pushed
you guys
aside.
Were all friends, maybe. Alice in Chains, hey, they're metal.
Yeah, sure.
They came from up there.
No, I mean,
metal-ish.
I think hair metal got pushed aside worldwide.
Yeah, it became a bit
with the release of Nevermind.
Right.
Yes.
So, but it morphed into something else in the background.
Right.
And then it came back with a unfortunate vengeance with new metal.
Right. Here we are today.
Yeah. So I don't know. Now, did any of you guys hang on for Slipknot and?
Oh, I like Slipknot. I think they're better than people think.
Kid
At least
Rock.
their debut album. Like I love like that song "Wait and Bleed."
Yeah, there's a handful of good Slipknot
there's a
records.
a handful of those bands that I think are more talented than people give them credit for.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, the gargling gravel vocalizations,
Cookie Monster vocals.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, but we are a movie podcast.
This is true.
And so how do you see, because I look back at a lot of the metal, the movies that most closely associated themselves with metal.
Sure.
And it was very much on a pop level. And it was like a lot of them were.
Most of them were, yeah. Yeah. It was definitely run through a Hollywood machine. It was sort of like, this is what we think the kids think heavy metal is.
Right. It's what the parents' vision of, it's like put, the big hair, your straps.
And just edgy enough to think that the kids are like down with some sort of subterfuge, right?
Right. And in some cases, it kind of worked.
Yeah.
I mean,
for sure.
Whether, as for kids,
yeah,
it was like, this is kind of, I mean, for the metal passengers like me,
yes.
as opposed to the savants.
Yeah.
I latched onto it. I have found some interesting things, like when they do contemporary horror movies, being referential about their metal.
Right.
I think they get, and I'll mention it in one of my selections. There's a certain kind of reverence that they show to it, and so they'll do a lot of name dropping, and yet it didn't feel. It's like, I don't think at the core it's the movie that I'm picking is metal to its heart and soul.
Sure,
but they
sure.
loved
I
referencing
think I know
it.
what you're picking.
Okay,
I think I do too.
It's one of my backups.
One, there was a film a couple years ago. I don't know that either one of you picked this. I did review it for on the website called Bliss.
Oh yes,
and it's got a lot of metal trappings.
Mm-hmm.
It certainly has an entirely metal soundtrack, which is actually really, really good.
It's a very dark movie.
It's a very, very dark movie. The film itself isn't that great because the protagonist is such a creep that
wholly unlikable. Yeah.
She's just so unlikable. You can't root for her at all, even though she's going through some really troubling times. But that there again, I mean, kind of to your point, Eric, it's like there's a reverence for horror, there's an interest in horror. They're using pieces and parts of it, but it's not sort of. Sorry, yeah. They're using pieces and parts of the heavy metal genre, but in taken together in total, it's not metal per se.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So kicking it off.
Yeah. Oh, let's do it. Let's do it. I think we've done a fairly good job of talking about
Metallica.
Metallica, Slipknot, Alice in Chains, Slayer, and Black Sabbath.
So we've done some name dropping of our own. I think.
Yep.
I think Liz managed to go to take us into some of the more southern fried variants that
Acid Bath.
Yeah,
Acid Bath's
I'm not
amazing.
familiar. Mike, what's your?
And I Hate God. I Hate God is another great New Orleans sort of crusty black metal doom outfit. If you
they cross, everybody crosses a lot of bands. I think Ben, the singer from there, was the singer of Soylent Green for a little while after Glenn, who is that singer, died during Hurricane Katrina. So it's a tight-knit family. I mean, and then, of course, like Pantera came from Texas.
Right, but Phil Anselmo is...
Superjoint Ritual, all those are New Orleans-based.
Yeah.
So who is the most evil, darkest metal band? Mike, I'm putting you on the spot. You name the most evil metal band out there.
Wow, that is a great question.
Who brings the darkness?
I would say the band. Speaking of being referential, I think most bands calibrate back to, and all the black metal bands, all the Norwegian black metal bands, the Swedish, the Finnish black metal bands, they all calibrated back to a British band from Birmingham, which is Venom. And that's, I think a lot of people, when they think about really dark, really evil, because, they used the Baphomet imagery, they used very, very dark lyrical content. Everything they talked about was driven by Satan.
So is the music sludgy, in that way, or is it, how
it's sort of like it's kind of proto thrash, I guess is what you'd call it. It doesn't fit in with the new wave of British heavy metal, which was around at the time. But it doesn't fit in with thrash. It was kind of like the bridge between the two things. Them, and there's a band called Hellhammer, which eventually became Celtic Frost, and on and on and on. This is things people absolutely don't care about. But I would say that's probably, to answer your question, so
Venom is the most evil metal band in history.
I would think so, and I think there's probably a million people that would completely disagree with that assessment. But I think if you look at it from a global perspective, you'd be hard pressed to find anything that spun off so much darkness and evil thought.
Did Venom have the reputation of actually believing in
and
worshiping Satan?
No, I mean that was definitely a put on for sure, and they brought that imagery to the table in each of their albums and each of their songs. But I think it was largely just a complete put on.
Because some of the great things in horror movies
are a complete put on.
Well, it's the supposition that the metal bands are so bad, so evil, that they believe in satanic ritual and that kind of stuff, and therefore it's like you play the classic. We'll see if any of you guys have a play the song backwards component in there, but that's part of the tropes, right? That is a heavy metal trope. It is also a horror movie trope.
That's right. That's right.
Anyways, let's get rolling.
So Eric, tell us your first selection, because I'm so curious now. As a passenger on the heavy metal train or the crazy train, the crazy train, if you prefer.
Crazy train.
Going off the rails on my crazy train. So I'm going to go with the most recent of my selections, and then we'll see if Liz is right if she was able to predict this. I have We Summon the Darkness, 2019.
Oh no.
That's what I was thinking of.
That's not the one I was
when you were describing it, I was thinking of We Summon the Darkness because
it's so very referential.
Yeah.
Because this is directed by Mark Myers, starring Alexandra Daddario, a fanboy's favorite, Maddie Hassan, Amy Forsyth, Austin Swift, Logan Miller, and Kean Johnson. Logan Miller, actually, he's making a habit out of doing a lot of these kind of pop horror movies. He was also in Escape Room, and so it's a pretty good cast. But this is
and you left out the most important person in the cast.
Oh,
Johnny Knoxville.
Johnny Knoxville.
Come on,
Johnny Knoxville. Yes,
he's probably the most famous person in the film.
Johnny Knoxville He's not doing his full-on Johnny Knoxville persona. He plays a preacher.
He's great. He's really great.
But this is 1988. All right, so this is
Yeah.
it's a throwback, and so the
But
whole
the film came out in 2018.
2000. It's sort of 2018, 2000. I think actually I have it listed.
I had it on my
2019.
list. Yeah.
Okay.
But it kind of got slow played. It sort of trickled its way out through streaming last year. And that's I think if you go onto our site, Joseph reviews it.
Yep.
But this is a group of pretty teenage girls road tripping to see Soldiers of Satan in concert. And at the same time, there's a spree of serial killings done in Satan's name, and heavy metal is blamed for the cultist atrocities, sacrifices, altars, pentagrams, the whole bit, right? But
and there's drug, sex, and rock and roll too.
Yes,
you can't forget that because that's
but that's not but
that's hand in hand with heavy metal.
But this all comes to the concert scene, right?
Right.
This is these leading ladies don't seem to be too rattled by the notion. They're fascinated by it though.
Right.
They when they arrive at the concert, they run into sort of three doofy metalheads at the show, nice enough guys who just so happen to be some idiots who threw a milkshake at their car. They forgive them, and it's one of those kinds of things where these young lads can't believe their luck because the three young ladies all look like they could be models, right?
Yep.
But you have Alexis, who's the alpha queen. You got Val, who's the wild and crazy girl. Bev, the sweet, if somewhat reluctant new girl. Ivan, the brooding mulleted nice guy who takes a shine to Bev. Kovacs, the stoner loser, and Mark, the gregarious big fella. Trope-filled cast.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So they go pick up the boys pick up on the girls, and they convince them to party with them. And Alex, the alpha queen, says, well, my house is available and we can go use the house to go party at. And they go, yeah, right on, let's do this. Her folks are gone on vacation, and so they all have a little campfire session out back, and they shared their love of metal. And the boys know they explain to the audience their love of metal,
right?
And this is by name dropping. So since this is 1988, this is Cliff Burton just died.
Right.
And so they're talking about, well, there's this guy, Jason Newsted. We don't know if he's going to be any good. Well, I hear that this new album's going to be. So lots of kind of winks and nods to the metal crowd going. Yeah. But
he's in some band called Flotsam Jetsam.
Right.
What is that? Yeah,
but this is one of the kinds of things where it's like, if I'm picking up on it, it's not really for. That's just sort of they're saying we understand, at a surface level, metal.
Yeah, I think that, they were trying to create a legitimacy. Which they do with, I think they do with the costuming as well. Although the costuming looks a little bit too 2018 and less 1988. Right. I mean, I don't know.
Oh, for sure.
I don't know any metalheads in 1988 that were that self-aware and that were that, maybe there was a handful of them out there, but the large majority of them were still just wearing, T-shirts and jeans.
Yeah, although the mullet action was strong.
The mullet action was pretty strong, yeah.
So, and there were some other metal references. The girls name dropped the Scorpions, but clearly they are newer to the metal scene and are not as conversant. They don't engage in the same way that the boys do. The boys seem to be very much into it.
Right.
There's a clue. So in the meanwhile, the background is that there are these killings, and the movie builds up three options. Option one, the boys are killers and have lured the girls into a trap.
Right.
Option two, the whole party is going to get descended upon by the true cultists, and the cultists are going to go out and wreak havoc and kill all these kids.
Right.
Option three is it's actually the girls who are the killers, and they've been playing possum.
Right.
And
you forgot option 4.
What's option 4?
Satan.
Well, that's like Satan's in the basement. Well, that could be, but the movie is playing up those three. They're building up those three potential paths.
Yeah.
And so you're sort of picking and choosing which way, or you're trying to guess which way it's going to go, and they sort of give winks and nods to any one of those possibilities. Won't tell you how it goes. It's very entertaining.
It is. I honestly, I'm terrible about this. Like, truth be told, I can't guess the endings. I can't guess how the films are going to unfold. I didn't see this one coming either. Yeah. And I really liked it. And the way it unfolded, I thought was really great. And I thought person who, or the persons who were the villains, were really great as well.
Right, and I think that everybody plays, the tropey characters,
Yeah.
actually play well to type,
Right.
right, and when the shit hits the fan, it sort of heightens all of the tendencies of the tropes the characters build up.
Right.
So in that way, it's fantastic. It is a very straightforward movie. It uses metal as a MacGuffin.
Yeah.
To get you to the crazy madness of the killing spree that will inevitably occur.
Right.
But it is the basis. But it's the reason why they all got together. And
Right.
so.
Metal once again taking an unnecessary hit.
Interestingly, though, with as much name dropping as that they did of the bands, they didn't utilize a whole lot of recognizable, at least to me, metal soundtrack.
I'd have to look to see who was listed on the soundtrack.
Because if the way that they were going, I would have thought that they would have broken out something
Probably couldn't
familiar.
afford it.
Yeah,
exactly.
they
I
probably
think that's
couldn't,
one of the things is that if you wanted to get Winger and pay for something.
Hey, I love Winger.
Kip,
I was gonna say.
Kip Winger
they
needs
probably
money.
couldn't afford it.
Kip Winger is really good, and I saw them right before we went into lockdown.
Kip Winger needs money.
I always thought that was a put-in. I didn't realize actually that was his real name.
Kip Winger?
That is his real name, Kip Winger.
Kip Winger. So anyway, that is my I think this
Liz just might have name dropped the most metal of all metal people.
His teeth are whiter than white. That's from that's all. I'll never forget that.
Yeah, the thing that I didn't realize, was, again, more referential stuff, but
Sure.
David Coverdale. I didn't realize.
Good Lord, you are in my wheelhouse right now.
Yeah, that he was sort of a legit 70s metal guy who was.
Whitesnake was a legit. They definitely quote unquote sold out. They wrote ballads. They wanted to get big in the United States. They had a legit presence in the UK as a metal band.
But the thing was, I think that there had been some concern. I was watching. I forget what the video was, but they were talking about, Coverdale's reaction once sort of the grunge started pushing a lot of the hair metal out.
Right.
And because a lot of people would, because he was sort of the old dude,
right,
making but managed to bring Whitesnake to the front of the line, and people would lump Whitesnake in with a bunch of the Motley Crues and the silly hair metal bands where this guy's got some real provenance to his background.
Oh yeah.
I didn't realize that. It's like this was part of Eric's heavy metal education.
They profited. Yeah. They profited greatly from that connection to heavy metal.
Yeah, that dude had a voice.
He has an amazing voice.
And he
looked
also
like recently
a lion.
Seen Whitesnake.
Right.
It was at a casino. The mighty have fallen.
Yeah, live at Chinook Winds.
They used you know what they used for We Summon the Darkness. They used a great Merciful Fate song, Black Funeral.
Okay,
so there you go.
There
was one.
So it's a deeper cut than I would.
It is a deeper cut. I do vaguely remember it when it came on in the film.
All right, so I'm gonna hand off to Liz.
Yep.
For your number one.
I am going to start in the hair metal territory with a classic hair metal, heavy metal movie, but I'm taking another direction because I'm going to recommend that you watch Rock and Roll Nightmare, but riff tracks. I do not want you to just watch this movie straight out. So, Rock and Roll Nightmare is the brainchild of John Michael Thor, who is a Mr. Canada bodybuilding, heavy metal playing, phenomenon.
He looks like a Norse god.
He does. I'm going to read you the riff tracks summary of Rock and Roll Nightmare. So it says, Rock and Roll Nightmare is what you get if Motley Crue guest hosted The Muppets Show. But it turns out it wasn't Motley Crue. It was a Motley Crue tribute band. And it wasn't the Muppets. It was some scrap foam from the Muppet Factory that fused together when the dumpster behind the studio got too hot and a bum stuck googly eyes onto it. And then it wasn't a Motley Crue tribute band. It was a sizable pile of industrial ooze that was struck by lightning and achieved basic sentience and learned rudimentary musicianship. Wait, that may actually be Motley Crue. Okay. So, like Spinal Tap recording the basement tapes on the set of Labyrinth, if it was written by Otto from The Simpsons, Rock and Roll Nightmare is some serious 80s cheese.
Oh my God,
it
is
is.
it ever?
Also, it
I
says,
wish I had written that. That was great.
yeah. Rock and Roll Nightmare combines the exciting worlds of hair metal and hideous puppets.
Yes.
The Tritons, who are the band, have rented a house in rural Canada. Their ambitious goal, to record 10 new minutes of music. For this, they have set aside an entire month. Little do they know that years earlier, or perhaps the previous day, an oven skeleton killed the family that lived in the house. Just stay with us. Needless to say, this causes any number of unspeakable horrors to happen, namely the full-length performance of several Triton songs and the sight of lead singer John Michael Thor's butt in the shower. Also, a literal portal to hell opens up, and the devil and several of his minions come through. These are not scenes for the faint of heart, as a few of these puppets are slightly scarier and more grotesque than Baby Sinclair from Dinosaurs. So that will just tell you what you're getting. This is so cheesy, so amazing,
yeah, super low budget,
so
super
terrible.
low budget. I think they made it.
So low budget.
I think they made it for under $50,000.
Well, that feels right.
And,
Yeah.
and free lunches for the crew.
Yeah.
That feels right. But this is a cult film. God, you got to watch it with the riff tax. It's hilarious. It is so terrible, but it's so bad that it's good. And when you get to the quote unquote twist of how they get the devil to show up here, ooh, your socks will be knocked off. Your heavy metal socks.
Socks will fly.
Socks will fly. So,
Yeah,
Rock and Roll Nightmare.
I had the opportunity about 5 years ago. John Michael Thor came to Portland and he showed a 35 millimeter print of this. I'm assuming probably one of the last known prints of Rock and Roll Nightmare. And he showed it at the Hollywood Theater, and then he did a sort of a Q&A afterwards.
Nice.
And I mean, to hear him talk about it, yeah, he obviously has the love of metal flowing through his veins. Even now, he's, I think, close to 70 years old. And, you know, his love of metal and wanting metal to branch out into the theaters was in part his reasoning for producing, or I'm pretty sure he was a producer on the film, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, he directed it, wrote the screenplay, starred in it, and produced it, and did the music.
Yes, the music. The music
it's
by
a John
the music
Michael
by
Thor joint.
Triton. Yeah, because I do recommend any of the first couple Thor records are really, really good. If you're looking for some just great late 70s, early 80s metal, Thor is solid. It is solid. No joke. I mean, you look at the album covers now and they look completely ridiculous, but
that's the name of the game, though.
Yeah, but the albums themselves, right. I mean, the musicianship is great. The albums are really, really wonderful. I cannot recommend Thor highly enough.
So but kick it off. Rock and Roll Nightmare.
Rock and Roll Nightmare. All right. Well, I'm gonna talk about a little bit about a film that was also tangentially related to Rock and Roll Nightmare. This is a film that gosh, I can't even remember I'm going to blank on the name of the director, but he was involved with Zombie Nightmare, and he also co-wrote Rock and Roll Nightmare. This is a film that after Rock and Roll Nightmare came out, his name is Fasano, but I don't know what his first name is. John Fasano. He directed a film called Black Roses.
Mm-hmm.
And Black Roses has a soundtrack involving King Cobra, Tempest, Hallows Eve, Lizzie Borden, and on drums in the film as a drummer for the heavy metal band that's out actively recruiting children to Satanism is Carmine Apiece.
Oh, really?
Yes, all true. Black Roses follows a band by the name of Black Roses in this sleepy little town called Mill Basin that is causing, and they're holding a series of what can only be described as like Up With People type events at the local high school. But they are using the music to recruit the children into the League of Satan, and turning the kids into demonic monsters.
Of course.
Really no more simple than that. It is a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful film. It was all shot, of course, in Canada, as we all know. Mr. Fasano,
Heavy metal capital of the world.
heavy metal capital of the world. John Fasano and John Michael Thor were both from Canada. My favorite bit about this, so the film was all shot in Canada primarily because they thought they were going to be able to get a better tax deal if they shot it there. But then they allegedly said, no, we're not. It's not really a question of taxes. We're shooting there because we knew that Hamilton, Ontario, they thought it resembled sort of an American industrial wasteland, and they thought that would be good for the film. But
it's a great lake. I mean, isn't Hamilton right across the lake from Detroit?
Yeah. It's right near Toronto there. But according to John Fasano, the director, he said that the owners of the house where they shot a lot of the film that were apparently in the middle of a divorce, and when they arrived for the last couple days of shooting of the film, and the crew was unloading all the gear, all the doors were locked and the lights were out, and so they couldn't finish shooting the film.
Wah, wah.
But it's interesting too, is because we've talked obviously a lot about sort of the transitions between sort of early metal and then hair metal and then into grunge. I mean, this definitely hit. I think I'm pretty sure Black Roses came out in 88, 89. But it hit in that sort of weird spot where you could already see the wheels were kind of falling off of metal and hair metal, and the band Black Roses that was turning the kids into demonic Satan-driven creatures was sort of this weird mix of like really kind of hard rock and then kind of like more Whitesnake kind of hair metal ballad stuff, and you could tell that they were caught. And so it's just interesting to look at from that sort of perspective, from a time capsule perspective, in that you can see you're really in this transitional period of heavy metal where it's like we're not quite sure what's going to happen with heavy metal, and we don't know where, from a directorial perspective and from a film perspective, we don't quite know where we should be pointing the camera, whether we should be pointing towards metal or hair metal or something else, which was coming very soon to destroy heavy metal. But Black Roses are really fun. It's a fun movie. I mean, much like Rock and Roll Nightmare, a lot of the same aesthetic, a lot of the same crappy puppetry, a lot of the same ridiculous dialogue, a lot of the same bosomy gals, and a lot of the same metal applies here. See Black Roses. Eric, what's next on the heavy metal list?
Okay, so we often have to remind folks that we are the gateway.
Yes,
to
indeed.
The trends and tropes of the horror genre.
Uh-huh.
And what is more gateway than a movie titled The Gate?
Oh, yeah.
From 1987. This
is
directed by Tibor Takacs, who went on to do lots of television, Police Academy, Sabrina, Ice Spiders, and Mega Snake. So for some Mega Snake off of the Sci-Fi Channel.
Is it Ice Spiders versus Mega Snake, or
No,
is it Ice Spiders period Mega Snake?
There's Ice Spiders and the other one, another movie called Mega Snake, but it wouldn't put it past Sci-Fi to actually have Ice Spiders versus Mega Snake. But this is 1987, so this is before any of the Sci-Fi Channel stuff.
Right.
And I guess Takacs' heyday. But so this stars a very young Stephen Dorff as a little boy named Glenn, and his buddy Louis Tripp playing Terry, who they uncover a giant thunder egg, a geode,
right,
in their backyard. When a tree gets struck by lightning, falls over, and it reveals that there is a large geode there, and they go, "Oh, what's this?" And they open it up, and they take it and they start experimenting with it. And at the same time, Stephen's parents decide that they want to go on a business trip and are going to leave his older sister, Al, played by Krista Denton, to essentially babysit. And of course, what this means is that she wants to throw a house party, right? And It is this
And
is
that means that's the most metal thing you could do.
That's right. Well, but the thing is that they all the kids are dressed in esprit, right?
Right,
they're
right,
just,
right.
It's,
Right.
it's not very. None of these teenagers look like they know heads or tails of metal. But Terry is a metalhead,
Right.
Because he's the skinny glasses wearing nerdy kid.
He's the outsider.
The
He's
loner
the dangerous outsider.
kid. Right? And but anyways, so the parents leave. Al throws a party for there's some strange things happen. Like one of the girls who comes over to the party does a levitation trick that elevates poor Glenn and freaks him out, and he goes upstairs and he cries, and and then later on there's something happens where so Terry gets to sleep over because that's the way to keep Glenn from tattletelling on it, calling mom and dad saying Al threw a party. But Terry's mom had died recently, and then she comes knocking at the door. She's not, that's like ghost of Terry's mom, comes over and he goes, "Mom," and hugs her, and it turns out she turns into the old English sheepdog that is the family dog, and then the dog dies.
Right.
Right, and it's like it's all this very strange happening. So they're freaking out about all these things happening. Meanwhile, there's this thunder egg that they decide to open up, and it spews out this green smoky stuff, and a lot of this stuff kind of weirds Terry out. So he goes and does some research, and by research I mean he goes into the liner notes of an album that he has. So this is the band's name is Sacrifix.
Yeah.
And the album is The Dark Book. And apparently the legend has it was after they wrote The Dark Book, the entire band died in a plane crash. Right. But Terry determines that this album, if you play it backwards, is a summoning spell. And it's the Bible for demons.
Yes.
And it describes the release of the old gods. Right. And so he's going, but look, in the song it says there's a geode and there's a levitation thing and there's the green mist, and the only thing is that there's a blood sacrifice. Thank God we didn't have a blood sacrifice. And meanwhile,
blood sacrifice coming up.
Blood sacrifice by way of dead sheepdog gets thrown into the pit where the tree used to be, where they dug the geode out, and it turns into a portal from hell.
Right.
And out crawl a bunch of these little homunculi, little demons that come crawling out, just scads of these little monsters. Really well done stop motion animation too. Really fun stuff. This was a PG movie, and it has been hailed as one of the scariest.
Also
PG
shot
movies.
in Toronto.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Okay. So
I think we should maybe like recast this whole episode as heavy metal horror films
from Canada.
From Canada.
From Canada. Canadian heavy metal horror.
So, this was, the goal becomes then gotta stop the gate from hell from opening up, and the devil and the giant devil, the Sacrifix announced that this is, the release of the old god.
Right.
And they have, and they've got a certain, there's a time clock that's sort of ticking down, this gate. And so they enlist the help of Al and her two kind of snooty girlfriends in the effort to try and shut this thing down. This is something that Stranger Things took, really borrowed heavily from a movie like this.
Sure.
Or something. This is like the Goonies, but scarier.
Yeah.
This is, so Poltergeist, Monster Squad, Fright Night, Silver Bullet, all these kinds of movies play off of that. But this is the one, I promised that there was going to be at least one movie where you play the record backwards.
Right.
And
That's it.
And you unleash a portal from hell.
Right.
This is it. The other one, but I would be remiss if we didn't mention a short film called Vinyl Destination.
Oh yeah.
Which we saw
awesome.
at Portland Horror Film Festival, which is another one of those play the album backwards.
Is Vinyl Destination available yet?
I don't think so. I just checked up on it. If you research it, Portland Horror Film Festival is what the link is. But that is
look for Vinyl Destination.
It is so good and it's so funny, and it's one of those things where the idiot metalheads want to summon a demon. So, and they managed to play it
Yeah,
backwards.
yeah. No, I think the gate has that great sort of nostalgic quality. I mean, I was going to say Monster Squad, and you said Monster Squad because it's like because if you look back at it, it's not particularly a great film, and there's not a significant metal score.
No.
Like all the bands are just like no name bands that aren't really particularly metal bands or anything like that. But it's got this great nostalgic kind of reverence to it.
It has,
for sure.
It has I remember being a 13-year-old kid listening to metal and wondering what happens if you spin the record backwards.
Exactly. Yep.
It plays back to all those things, and it's a date stamp.
Oh,
on an era.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, for sure.
Anyway, so The Gate, 1987.
All right, Liz, what's the next Canadian heavy metal horror film on the list?
I'm actually taking us back to the States.
Oh, okay.
To a little town called Holliston, Massachusetts, because this is a horror comedy sitcom called Holliston, created by Adam Green of Hatchet and Frozen fame, and Joe Lynch of Wrong Turn 2.
Yeah.
Spoken in hushed tones.
Yes. This is a series that came on, remember FearNet? That was a cable channel back in like 2012.
That's right.
And it's now available on Shudder. And so this stars Joe and Adam as two roommates. They work at like a local cable access channel, and they also host a show on there called The Movie Crypt, where they watch horror movies. Their boss is played by Dee Snider from Twisted Sister. And Adam has an imaginary friend played by Dave Brockie, who's Odorous Orungus from Gore. So Odorous lives in his closet and his imaginary friend. So there's your metal part of this. They're also heavy metal fans, so they're always listening to metal, wearing metal T-shirts. And even though this is kind of like if Friends was about horror and like two kind of down on their luck roommates, it also has guest stars Seth Green, Tony Todd, Danielle Harris, Kane Hodder, Bill Moseley, Sid Haig, James Gunn, and John Landis. Wow. So this horror cream of the crop, and it's hilarious. They each have girlfriends. They have Corey, who is this girl that Adam used to date and is now always constantly trying to win back. And Laura plays Joe's girlfriend. She's an artist who paints like horror pictures. And it's just very silly, very fun, kind of sweet. And if you're in the mood for a sitcom, you don't want to give up horror, some good horror effects, and you want heavy metal, Holliston is the choice for you.
And Liz, you said it's on Shudder right now.
It's on Shudder right now. Yes.
Awesome.
Okay.
They have
awesome.
2 seasons of it. I think it's got 17 total episodes.
Yeah, because I think they had to, after Dave Brockie from Gore died a couple years ago, they had to like put a pause on it for.
And Sid Haig died too.
And Sid Haig.
And then it never came back. Well, Sid Haig wasn't a regular. Dave Brockie was.
Right.
And then like other people, went on to other projects.
Right.
But it's totally worth a watch. It's very fun. It's cute, and Dee Snider is a delight in it. All the time. If you like hair metal, you've got.
How's he look now? Does he still have?
Looks exactly the same, and he dresses. He plays. His character is named Lance Rocket, and he is a glam rocker, and he's the lead singer of a Van Halen cover band.
Yeah, I mean, Dee Snider has definitely embraced horror over the years. I mean, he was in that great movie Strangeland, and and he's been in all sorts of other stuff too. And I mean, he obviously knows and understands and exploits that connection probably better than anybody else.
Yeah, well, he had such and
I only mean that as a complete compliment.
Well, I think that he knew exactly what he was doing.
Oh, 100%.
That all of the wild costuming and makeup and theatrics. That was, he understood showmanship. I mean, wasn't there's a Kiss movie like the
Kiss versus the Phantom of the Theme Park.
Okay, there you go.
Heck yeah, which is one of the weirdest, most bizarre Hanna-Barbera Sid Marty Krofft
Kiss fans are weird and bizarre. So.
heavy metal mashup you will ever see in your entire life.
Do you consider Kiss to be heavy metal?
Sure.
I mean,
Sure.
I guess so.
I mean, they're on the edge. Yeah. I mean, they had a great disco single too, but you know.
Yeah, they're heavy glam.
Yeah. Well, and that's really not to digress back into the heavy metal torture pit again, but that's where Twisted Sister. Twisted Sister, came from New York Dolls, and they'll tell you that they came from punk rock. They didn't come from heavy metal, and that was exactly what their origin story was. There is a great documentary about Dee Snider as well, called or not about just Dee Snider, but it's about Twisted Sister, I think it's called We Are Fucking Twisted Sister, and it's a really good documentary. I do encourage folks to watch it.
You can read that a number of different ways.
Yes. Well, I think that might very well be by design, as we just said. Dee Snider is quite the marketer,
right?
Self-promoter.
Okay, Mike.
All right, I'm going to talk a little bit about a film called Ragman, or Death at 33 RPM in foreign markets. This is a film. It's a 1986 Dino De Laurentiis joint called Trick or Treat.
I was wondering if anyone was going to do Trick or Treat.
Yes, starring
Trick or Treat.
Not starring Mark Price, who was the goofy neighbor from the Alex P. Keaton Family Ties program, Mark Price. But this does include a couple performances, one by Gene Simmons and one by Mr. Ozzy Osbourne. But the film basically centers around a teenager who is visited. The teenager, of course, as we've been describing throughout our entire podcast, is the glass bespeckled, dark, loner, nerdy kid who happens to love heavy metal. Yep. And he, of course, is visited over and over by his heavy metal hero, Sammy Kerr. And Sammy Kerr has recently passed away, but Sammy Kerr continues to visit him. He is, the young kid is absolutely devastated, so he goes to visit his local neighborhood radio DJ friend, Gene Simmons, who in the film goes by Nuke. And Nuke explains to Eddie, Mark Price, that he has the only known copy of Sammy Kerr's last unreleased album, Songs in the Key of Death. And he's got an acetate print. And Nuke, Gene Simmons, has said that he is going to play it on Halloween as a tribute, because that was Sammy's plan all along, to release it at midnight on Halloween. Apparently Blackie Lawless from Wasp, to further name drop metal.
Okay.
He was originally supposed to play Sammy Kerr, but he didn't. And then Ozzy Osbourne, who you would think would have a pretty significant role, doesn't. He plays a televangelist decrying the evils of heavy metal music. But there is some great stuff in the credits involving Ozzy Osbourne, where he improv'd like a 20-minute televangelist speech about the evils of heavy metal music, that they only use bits and pieces of it. And apparently Gene Simmons of Kiss fame was offered the role to play of Sammy Kerr, the ghostly metal musician, but he, of course, being Gene Simmons who he was, I'm sure this is all revisionist history coming from the mouth of Gene Simmons, but sure, he was not impressed with the script, which I take as code for they couldn't drum up enough money to give Gene Simmons. But allegedly he was not impressed with the script and said, I'll play the role of this radio DJ, because he had some affinity for like Wolfman Jack growing up as a kid. And so he said, I'll do that part, but I'm only going to do a couple limited shots. And he really does. It's like I think he's only in like three scenes in the film. The film, to further drop more metal musicians, the entire soundtrack, which is like near to frigging impossible to get a copy of, was produced by Fastway. Of course, Fast Eddie Clarke was originally in Motorhead, Lemmy Kilmister, but Fastway did all the music for the movie, and it is a good soundtrack. You can listen to obviously bits and pieces of it on YouTube. So yeah, I mean, you got Ozzy, you got Kiss, you got Wasp, you got Fastway. I mean, it is chock full of metal, and if you do watch the film, Mark Price, the young boy who becomes obsessed with Sammy Kerr, they spend quite a bit of time in his bedroom, and the bedroom is just plastered with everything you would think it would be plastered with, Saxon, Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, Tigers of Pantang, the whole thing, all over the walls, every which way. So I mean, this film is dripping and oozing with heavy metal provenance.
Yeah, this is
Trick or
one
Treat.
of those Trick or Treat is one of the ones that if you Google
Yeah.
horror heavy metal.
Oh yeah. This is the absolute pinnacle of heavy metal heavy metal horror.
Right. And I'm surprised
And I
actually
would say it
we
was
didn't end up on our Halloween list.
I mean, definitely Halloween plays a pretty critical
Play the
role
album
to the
on
film.
Halloween.
Right. Yeah, it does play a pretty critical role, but it is heavy metal is really the predominant focal point of the film, not Halloween.
Right.
So Eric, what is number 666 on your
666. Yeah. Well, I think this is probably my favorite of within this subgenre. And I have to admit, I've come to appreciate it and like it more with a little bit of time. Deathgasm.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
This is
I kind of forgot about Deathgasm.
oh god, it is so very metal, and it's about the again, loser kids in the basement playing.
Although it's not in Canada, but it is in a British territory.
New Zealand.
Right? Three nerdy guys in their basement playing not very impressive metal, but this is another demon summoning through heavy metal.
Right.
Thing. It's comedy. Of course, it's a Kiwi movie, so it's going to be comedy.
Right.
It is extraordinarily bloody. It
Oh,
is
yeah.
so much gore. Just revels in it, but it
reminds me a lot of both in terms of the gore and the execution, no pun intended, of Black Sheep.
Yes.
It's got a lot. It's
Right.
got a lot of the same beats.
Yes, it's the sort of that wry,
Mm-hmm.
deadpan humor, and then some just raw slapstick too, right? With the
Right.
and I think a lot of this goes back to Peter Jackson,
Yeah.
and his love of over the top.
Oh yeah, 100%.
So this is starring Milo Cawthorn as Brody, James Blake as Zach, Nick Hoskins Smith as Dave, and Kim Crossman as Medina, the love interest. So they, Brody is the loner kid in question, and he meets Zach flipping through albums at a record store and doing the looking over your shoulder and
Right.
checking out how cool is this guy's taste in music, right? Which is, I'm sure we're all familiar with. Just it's like who's in what. One, I need to get to that section of the records,
Right.
But two, it's like what you got there.
Right.
Oh yeah, that album, that's a great album. So there's a bit of that kind of a thing going on, and they converge over the local metal legend Ricky Daggers, the lead singer of Hexen Sword, right? And they in a fit of mischievousness, they sneak into his abandoned home and steal some sheet music, a cryptic piece stuffed into the album cover for The Black Hymn. Yeah, The Black Hymn is ritual music. It's a demon summoning script, and playing the music channels something very loud, and Brody ends up unwittingly channeling these evil spirits. They also really rock out at that point. It's like that these 2-bit musicians actually manage. It's one of those kinds of things. This is a crossroads moment.
Right.
Right, going down, meet the devil, sell your soul to the devil, and you get to become a music legend. And so then they form the band. Zach's also been invited into the band, and Zach is going to be the singer, and they call it Deathgasm, and it's spelled Dethgasm, and then they said, and it's all in all caps because lowercase is for pussies. So Zach, the resulting reaction, it's like causes it starts. Demons starts hopping into the bodies of people they know, and they get attacked, and they have to put them down with things like chainsaws and double-headed dildos, and it's like, all right, we're into that kind of action. Totally silly, and they're they realize that they have to they have to undo the ritual, and so the whole thing, the MacGuffin is, okay, we got to go back in there, and we've got to recant this stuff, and
Right.
and the band is all fractured because some of them want, it's like, no, we got to, this is us, man, we've done it, and then it's like, no, this is evil, we can't do this. It's like, I thought we were about evil. So this is like most Kiwi horror, this comes with sublime comic timing.
Yes.
It's probably over long. I think they probably could have sped up some of it, but they have so much that
it does sort of devolve at the end with the sort of like the final battle scene gets a little long.
So many severed limbs.
Yeah.
But all at the same time, they got, it's the axe as an axe.
Right.
It's like, that's always great to see the guitar wielded as a weapon. So this was it is front to back. Unlike The Gate, which touches on metal as a hinge point,
right.
This is saturated with it. It's about the culture of being a loser metalhead kid, and then achieving godlike prowess, and actually how much do you fully believe in the evil, right? And that is that's why I ask you. It's like,
right.
So really, what's the most evil album, and how many of the people who actually listen to this are really truly wanting to see the evil?
Right.
They kind of did, but be careful what you ask for. You just might get it.
Exactly.
So anyways, Deathgasm from 2015.
Heavy metal is a cautionary tale for sure.
Yep.
Liz.
Okay. I'm going to do this one, but I'm hoping that Mike is going to pick my back up, but we'll see. But so, okay, my number one metal film is 2001 British horror film called Cradle of Fear. So, Cradle of Fear is an anthology directed by Alex Shandon, and it stars Danny Filth from Cradle of Filth. It also is, all the soundtrack is by Cradle of Filth, and Alex Shandon is the guy who directed all of Cradle of Filth's videos. So this is totally metal pedigree, and it is a anthology film. So there's 3 segments and a 4th story wraparound that's about an imprisoned serial killer wreaking vengeance on those responsible for his capture, but he does this through his son, who is Danny Filth from Cradle of Filth, playing an unnamed character just called, quote unquote, the man. So is this a great movie? No. Is the music great? Yes, the music is great. If you are into Cradle of Filth, you will be into this soundtrack. It is going to go heavy metal in the fact that all the women in the movie look like porn stars. It is a little bit softcore at parts, but it is also super bloody and super gross. I mean, like, heads blow off, all sorts of stuff. So
when you said anthology, I thought, oh God, she's going to talk about the Glenn Danzig film Veronica.
No, I skipped that one. I'm a huge Danzig fan, but I'm not going to go there. Robert did that.
Yeah, I
know. No, I went with Cradle of Fear, which is, when I first saw this, it was in 2001, because this is a straight to video, and you can now view it on YouTube. You are not going to find it anywhere else unless you want to purchase a copy of the DVD or something like that. It's completely silly, but it is, the Cradle of Filth is one of those bands that probably at the beginning took themselves a lot more seriously than they really should have. So that's where this movie is coming from. They're fantastic. I've seen them live a couple of times. Danny Filth has like a 6-octave vocal range. He's pretty amazing, but he is a little bit silly in this, and it is a silly movie. But this is the ultimate culmination of heavy metal and horror, because it is a love letter to just horror movies with nothing but heavy metal. It looks like a video halfway, most of the cast. So.
Does it have like the low lit smoke kind of coming up?
Oh, there's smoke machines for sure. There's definitely smoke machines, especially when the man is like stalking victims. It almost has that classic Exorcist. He's standing outside their house with smoke all around and like shadows.
Where's that steam coming from?
Yeah,
I'll pay no attention to that. It's fog.
So if you really want to get into just seeing something silly, gross, but with a good soundtrack, head on over to YouTube and check out Cradle of Fear.
Is it available on YouTube?
Cradle of Fear is the movie. Cradle of Filth is the band.
But you can watch.
Members of Cradle of Filth are in it, but Danny Filth is one of the quote.
But you can watch it on YouTube right now, Liz.
Yes, you can.
All right. Ooh, FREE.
Because it's probably someone uploaded their DVD.
Right.
The quality's not good because it is from 2001.
Sure.
This one hasn't been picked up by Criterion and remastered yet. Not sure why.
It's just a matter of time. Put out the call.
Just a matter of time. Yeah. So, heavy metal director, heavy metal soundtrack, heavy metal star.
It's got it all. That's some John Michael Thor pedigree right there.
Well, let's see if Mike manages to do some serious mind reading. And,
no, I don't think I am. In fact, I'm going to throw you guys a total curveball. This is a curveball for me on multiple levels. This is a 2009 rock and roll vampire comedy film called Suck.
We're going against the grain.
This has
vampire movie from Mike.
This has the stars Alice Cooper. Heavy metal.
Sure.
It's as horror and heavy metal infused as you can get. Alex Lifeson from Rush. Henry Rollins.
Okay.
Iggy Pop.
Okay.
Moby. And the film stars Malcolm McDowell, but it also has Dave Foley from Kids in the Hall.
Okay.
It basically it's not really a metal film per se. It's a film about a band. So I'm bending the genre. I'm bending the genre ever so slightly, but the people in it have some heavy metal credential. But it follows a failed sort of indie rock band called The Winners, and their lead singer, who is a female, is turned into a vampire. And they start to attract a very, very different,
Is it a gothy crowd?
Yeah, they start to attract all these sort of like goth type folks,
the bloodsuckers
and vampires, and the rest of the band gets kind of pissed at her because they don't know why they're attracting all these people, and then when they do find out, she refuses to turn the rest of them into vampires.
The rest of the band wants to be vampires.
The rest of the
classic. Exactly. It's like What We Do in the Shadows. It's like
like a
exactly. Yeah. And then following hot on the heels of the band and their successes, since the lead singer becomes a vampire, is Malcolm McDowell, who plays Eddie Van Helsing. And it is a wonderful, because Malcolm McDowell can really, he can turn it up, down, sideways, backwards, forwards.
Sure.
That guy can act like nobody's business. And he turns it up in such a wonderful and comedic way. But then all along, you've got these interactions with not Alice Cooper, but Alice Cooper. You've got Iggy Pop. You've got
now. Did they do any of their own original music in this? Like with that band? It's like it's kind of who's going to hold the mic?
Yeah. No, exactly. No, it's the band The Winners is as I say, it's just kind of this sort of kind of a light indie band, and it has nothing really to do with heavy metal, save for the people in the film have a lot of heavy metal and punk pedigree.
Yeah.
So that's why I chose it. When I was looking, because obviously there's a million other heavy metal horror films, but then when I sat down and actually watched this, it was really kind of funny. It was really kind of cute. And following on the theme of tonight, not just heavy metal horror, the production for this film took place in
Canada,
Toronto.
Yeah, of course. Well, as soon as you said Alex Lifeson, it's like, well, okay, yeah. All right.
Yeah.
So where can you catch this?
You can catch it on. I'm pretty sure it's on Amazon Prime right now. You can just watch it for free. Yeah, 2009 Suck Canadian film starring more people than should be in a movie and more famous people than should be in a film. It is really quite the ensemble cast, but it's pretty funny, it's pretty delightful, and it's really well done too. That's the other thing. It's a really, really well done film. It's not like I'm not going to say it's like What We Do in the Shadows. It's not sort of like knock down, drag out funny. I mean, you're not going to be like on your side the whole time, but there are some definitely funny bits to the film.
Cool. So yeah,
I'm throwing in a 30-second stump for what I was hoping you were going to pick.
Yeah, which is?
It's The Devil's Candy.
Oh,
from 2015. Sean Byrne, Ethan Embry, Sherry Appleby, and that's when you said referential. That's why I thought you were going to do Devil's Candy, because it's not really about heavy metal, but he's a super heavy metal fan, and his young daughter is into heavy metal, and that's the soundtrack for the whole thing. And
I was close.
Yeah,
I was close on
Devil's
that
Candy
one.
is unlike a lot of the other stuff that we picked, is a much more serious film.
It is.
And it's real good.
Yeah.
So like two of mine are not, but they're fun.
Yeah, I would.
It's a really good film.
I think the large majority of the heavy metal films have their tongue fully implanted in their cheek.
Right.
I mean, that's definitely, like, I think they know it, they get it. I mean, we talked about like kind of the hucksterism that Dee Snider brings to the music world. I think a lot of the people that produce these films are involved in these films. They definitely understand it's a shtick, it's a gimmick, it's fun, and it should never be taken too seriously.
I wonder if Kirk Hammett will ever appear. Does he have any film credits in a horror movie?
I don't think he does.
It's rather remarkable.
It is kind of remarkable. I mean, given the fact that given he's so deeply involved. But that is a really, really great question.
Yeah. Something else that I thought.
Kirk Hammett, come on this horror podcast.
I know you should come on this horror podcast, Kirk Hammett.
Absolutely.
We would love to have you.
If we had expanded this to rock and roll horror, or included punk in this, Green Room would have had. I think that's as serious horror movies that are actually truly scary. Hard to beat something like Green Room. I mean, there's nothing light and silly about that film. But
oh God, no.
You could have also gone Uncle Peckerhead,
right?
Which we just saw and loved. Uncle Peckerhead,
which is now available for streaming.
They make fun of the metalheads in that one in the parking lot. The metalheads.
Yeah, that's right.
And my fallback position, which I wasn't sure if I was gonna. I thought We Summon the Darkness might have ended up being bumping into one of your selections, but I was going to go with a real stretch for my alternate pick, and it's Get Your One Way Ticket to Midnight, Heavy Metal the Movie, 1981.
Oh,
because it's got that thing's. I mean, there's a lot of non-heavy metal music in it, but it does feature
Donald Fagen.
And Stevie Nicks and Journey, but it's got but it does have Black Sabbath.
That's right,
featured prominently.
Yep.
It's got zombies on a B-17 flying fortress, and it's got women with huge boobs. So and flying pterodactyl things and machine guns, and it's like, come on, it's so metal. And at the same time, it's like, you could argue the metal part, and you could also argue the horror part of it, but it is one of those things that sort of falls into culturally, a lot of these kind of fun and occasionally silly movies. So
yep.
And here's our tagline from Rock and Roll Nightmare: when you raise hell, the devil must be paid in full.
Yeah!
That's my heavy metal guitar sound.
Rock and roll.
Rock and roll.